So if you read Jamie's email, we wanted to talk about mental health in the legal industry. It's no secret, if you read the ABA's statistics, there is a higher rate of depression and anxiety and mental health and substance abuse problems in the legal industry because of the high stress environment that it is. And, I know the ABA has taken steps like, every conference that I go to that's sponsored by a bar association usually has a section. They have an AA meeting. They'll have other types of meetups that are geared towards talking about those topics. At Tech Show last year, right before the pandemic hit, I remember, some of the morning breakfast meetups that they had, and it was a great way to network and just kind of strip, the people behind the suits and all the marketing and branding and kind of the networking, the motions that you go through. Week in St. Louis, we lost a personal injury attorney, Ed Brown. I remember growing up seeing, if you don't know who Brown and Brown are, you haven't been driving on Highway 70 or Highway 40 or, watching old St. Louis TV ads like Becky's Carpets, Brown and Brown, Goedekers. So seeing as that is something that has been talked about in the news recently, we wanted to bring that up and just kind of have an honest discussion about, what actions are people actually taking. It's one thing to bring awareness to it and hear about it, but in what ways is your firm supportive of people with mental health issues or talking about this, making sure to care for their employees, and especially now in the pandemic where the rates are up with the isolation people are feeling, the lack of social engagement, So I'll just leave it open for discussion.
So, if I may, at least, statistically, some of you may know I have had an interest really since college in, and partly through my practice and my clients as well, have had an interest in, mental health and dependency and use issues. And I'm volunteer for the Lawyers Assistance Program here in Illinois, and have done some presentations on those, and dabbled in. I'm by no means a mental health professional, but certainly through those connections, anecdotally, it appears, I think most of us believe that it's probably greater than 50% of attorneys have either a substance issue, a mental health issue, or a co-occurring issue. It's of course much higher than is reported. So it is certainly pervasive, and of course, and that was even before what we've got going on now, which is stressing a lot of people and certainly aggravating a lot of people's physical and mental conditions, for whatever that's worth.
I think it's, I've been in volunteer with Missouri Lawyers Assistance Program for quite some time, and it's been an ongoing point of discussion as well on this side of the river. And just one other thing is the Missouri Lawyers Assistance Program, CLE, is next Friday. And for those that are looking for cheap credit, it is cheap credit. I think it's less than $60 for a full day's worth of CLE. So it is a good deal. I've been in several lawyers group Zoom calls where this subject has been discussed in recent weeks, and I think that I know for myself going into the third wave, that's sort of taken a toll, and it's time to redouble efforts to for my own mental health and reaching out to other lawyers to help with them.
I know, follow up, on you, David. I was on a call on a Zoom 2 days ago for actually our Solo Small Firm Conference, which starts today here. Used to do it live, of course. Jamie is actually one of our speakers. I think has spoken at us live, including last year, but is doing a recorded session this year. So it's a group of people that I've long known, and I would have to say, and the call was in the middle of the day, and it was notable. I have to say at least 75% of the people on the call were visibly, and I think partly it's, the cues we pick up, but, we're visibly stressed, whether it's they're slightly disheveled or, people that I know, and I know the way they look. And, we've had a little bit of that here and there. And the judges I know that do Zoom calls, they get all sorts of stuff, but they get some of that. But it really struck me on this call a couple of days ago for these people that many of which I'm, friendly with. It's like, wow, this is, no surprise. It's really beating people up.
Follow up on that, because that's really interesting, Randy. For me, and I'm older, so I think your appearance is probably more important than Sarah does, for instance, as a younger person. But it's always been important to me to have the look. And I've noticed, like you, that when you're on Zoom, and even for myself, it's like, why bother? Nobody's going to know if I have pants on or not. Or and I early on fought the COVID-5. It's like, well, I was home and I was working, but it was easy to go get a snack. It's a symptom that things are not good. And after the Ed Brown suicide, I was talking to, many of you know, my fellow executive director, Krista, in Springfield, who is very wise and knowledgeable about mental health issues, and has had some experiences herself. And she said, Zoe, everybody's fragile right now. No matter who you are, or where you are in the spectrum, I think this has had a huge impact on everybody. And we don't realize until one little thing happens, and it's like yesterday I had a washing machine installed and they didn't do it correctly. And normally I would have been, whatever. But this time I was like, oh my gosh, what's wrong with you people? So I think we all are pretty fragile, and we need to deal with that for ourselves, but we also need to recognize that in others, that be as kind as we possibly can, I guess.
Yeah, I would say I've noticed, I think Jamie talked about this early on in our, when we first started these meetings because of COVID and the isolation people were feeling and the need for networking. But, mentioning showing a lot more grace to your clients or the people that you're working with, just having an honest conversation with them. Like if they haven't been communicating, sorry, my cat's being very verbal right now. If they haven't been communicating with you or kind of drop off the face of the earth and you feel like you're being ghosted, sometimes just reaching out and saying, like, hey, how are you really doing? Can we just catch up for 15 minutes off the books? And, just see what's really going on. That, a lot of times we have found out that clients are really sick, or that they dealt with a family tragedy, or there's something else that's going on that maybe explains why they haven't been communicating or, active or responsive. So just showing a lot of grace to people and trying to, empathize. Don't assume the worst always, but, try to assume that it must be really important. They must have something else going on if they're not being present.
I think it's important to look at, to evaluate our own self too. I mean, like I said, I've, sort of felt the pressure in this third wave, and, the election coming up and all the bad news all the time, and the politicization of the Supreme Court. And I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Well, that sounds dire. But to reach out and communicate with others, not just two other people that live with me, but, to reach out to people outside the house, to make sure I'm getting out in the fresh air, make sure I'm doing some exercise, make sure I'm eating right, meditation, journaling, all those things that in the best of times I may let slip. It's really important to take all those things. And a friend of mine reminded me this morning and to stop checking in on the news. You don't have to stop entirely, but spend half the time that you have been, because that just reinforces all the stress.
No, I definitely agree. I've had to learn to compartmentalize, especially when it comes to the work week with the news. My job, unfortunately, is running the social media accounts of our clients. So it's not really an option for me to be off of Facebook or social media, especially where, the stories are a lot more twisted, or there's just a lot of anger and hurt being on display. So we've taken turns as a team monitoring accounts, especially, coming up on the election and everything that's happening. A lot of people want to stay away from the news. And it's pretty stressful to have to still trot forward with everything else going on. If you're getting all the notifications, and I have a Mac, so everything beeps on every device every time something new happens. And I've had to learn to just have these silent blocks where I don't get updated on stuff.
So go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, to wrap it up though, but going into the third wave, I think what's really more depressing about it is we started it going into the spring and then the summer, and we were able to go outside more and be around people in a safe way. And now as we're going into the winter, it's kind of back to the beginning days of shelter in place where the weather wasn't so good, and it's a lot more digital networking and hanging out. So I've made the effort to go ahead and reinstate. I used to have a month or weekly game night group on Zoom, and so I've reinstated some of those. We kind of stopped in the summer when we were all able to go outside, but those are some habits I'm doing in my personal life to make sure that I'm staying connected to people in the winter.
So Jamie did a program for me in Florida entitled Dealing with Difficult People. And as we're talking about this, there was just a small segment she did that really resonated with me, and I think about it all the time. But she was talking about difficult people and the different personalities, and then she said, sometimes if you're having a really bad day and just everybody is difficult, maybe you need to look in the mirror. And for some reason that really resonated with me, because if I get edgy and all of a sudden nobody's doing what I want the way I want it to be done, and everybody's getting on my nerves, even the clerk in the grocery store, and sometimes you need to take a step back and say, maybe the problem's me. So even more valuable now, I think, is look in the mirror every once in a while.
Hi, it's Michelle with EM3. We recognize that this pandemic has been very hard on everyone. We are starting a committee. We're still trying to think of the best name for it. We've tossed out names like community outreach or work-life balance. I don't know, it's going to be a composite of things where a group will sort of curate ways that we can give back if people want to volunteer. We're going to host, and it will be over Zoom, at least initially, some yoga and meditation times during like a lunch break type of event on a at least a monthly basis, if not more often. But we recognize that people are more stressed out. So we're trying to come up with ideas of what we can do so to make people's lives more fulfilled. So I appreciate listening to what you all are doing and have going on. I will definitely circle back to our committee members with some additional ideas of what we can do to support them.
Yeah, that sounds great. Michelle, if you can drop a link in the chat for whatever, however we can find the information for those events when you all plan it, that'd be great.
Oh, I sure will.
We can forward the information along.
When I was going through the list of things, the one thing I haven't done that's really important is helping others. Getting outside yourself and helping other people is is really good for ourselves.
Yeah, we find it, I think, easy sometimes to be more compassionate towards others than we do with ourselves. And I didn't make that up. I heard that somewhere, but it's something that, I think about sometimes. It's interesting, though, because one of the programs I was talking earlier about one of the programs I used to do was dealing with difficult people or dealing with difficult clients, depending on, the audience and the purpose. Sometimes it'd be a drug court team. Sometimes it'd be, attorneys or something like that. But yeah, sometimes you do have to, look at yourself. But I think the thing that if I can segue in a little something else, but related, the thing that is, that is striking to me and is an impediment is, certainly, the firm culture, because there are, we're sort of preaching to the choir here. I mean, I think all of us, believe in this and and you can believe in it from the health perspective, because there's certainly there's a health end to it, but there's also productivity into it, and both in short term and long term. So, if you're dollars and cents people, but, I think that, I have certainly seen and certainly experienced, much of this, not allowing, or not, supporting your people in firms. Solos have it one way because they may not be in with people, but, firms have a separate issue, which is a lot of firms, it's cultural and and it goes way back. And, you have people who are, many generations ahead of you who, may not buy into it, who, there's a stigma, who may, take the approach, people should just buck up, who say, well, you just let it roll off of you, say this is a tough business, who are solely focused on money, without regard to that. We have a lot of things that are, endemic, I think, to the, to the profession, which is, impediment that, certainly I see here with the LAP and some of that. I'm sure David has seen it, too. You get, people in a firm, some firms are really good about, the, that part of HR, if you will, but others are simply not. So I'm not sure where that goes other than, it's an impediment. I get, and for me personally, that makes it so much more important to, you're kind of on your own with it at times, which is unfortunate. The other thing, I guess, that relates to that, and then I'll stop talking because I've talked a lot, is, with the new way we're doing things here, and the days getting shorter, and knowing that sunlight is good and the fresh air is good, and even, for me, 10 minutes out is even enough. It's like the 10-minute mark, you start to hit, oh, I feel a lot better. I have tried, as the days have gotten shorter, tried to plan to make sure that I can get outside and do something, because I can go back and get on the computer and do it later if I want, or I'll do it tomorrow, whatever. So it's kind of been a little easier, to do that, because we're starting to wrap our heads around, look, our schedules are different and we do things differently, and again, for me, taking some, just trying to take control of it and just go out and, make sure during the day that I set aside that, look, I'm not going to be at the office or home or wherever it is, as long as I normally would be. I'm going to leave and I'm going to go do it. Maybe I'll come back to it. Maybe I won't. So anyway.
Well, Randy, I definitely resonate with that. I actually just wrote a guest blog post on one of our clients' feeds about kind of the end of toxic workplace culture because of the pandemic. The increased flexibility in schedules that, it's better for everyone all around. It's better for families. It's better for people with, mental health conditions or chronic illnesses, disabilities, the flexibility of the work from home life, and kind of understanding that, people will try to keep normal hours, but it's been a lot of, like Matt and I were working till about 11 last night because he needed to take breaks to, go out and vote and put some stuff together at his house with his wife. So, just taking the time for family. I think people have been a lot more understanding of that. Workplaces have had to be more understanding as long as you get your hours in and get the projects done. You're not measuring yourself next to people and saying, okay, who's there the first and who's there the latest. It's harder to measure that, and you just are measuring people's stuff based off of their work product and billable hours. So I definitely think it's also allowed people, sometimes it's awkward if you have to leave in the middle of the day to go see a therapist or go to a doctor's appointment or whatever. There may be a stigma, whereas now, because of telehealth, and you're able to do that in the middle of the day and block out your calendar. But I know that's something I felt a stigma at previous places of work. If I said I have to take this lunch break because I have to have a call with my therapist, feeling scared to share that or not having the proper HR routes.
That you bring up an important point is the stigma. And one of the things I've tried to do through my LAP work and then just personally is trying to normalize that. So I talk to various groups and talk about my own recovery and my own, mental health issues and all that. I haven't lost any clients that I know of as a result of it. I'm open about it, and people share with me things that they might not otherwise share. And the point of me doing it is to normalize these issues.
I'm glad that you've had that experience, Dave, because I think the more that we, do talk about it or bring it up, I've seen that other people can be more vulnerable with me when I'm vulnerable with them. And I put on my calendar, like I actually am going to see a doctor, I'm doing XYZ. Other people are like, oh, well, it's not as weird if I tell them that I have to be out of the office on XYZ day because of something else. I'm interested to hear, like, what things have your firms specifically implemented? Like, do any of your firms have policies on being able to use like sick time for doctor's appointments or any flexibility? One thing that really dictates a company's culture about how they talk about mental health is, if they invest in employees' benefits and stuff so they're able to have access to that. Do any of you have specific policies that you can think of, or advertising CLEs related to mental health?
No.
Yeah. See, I mean, that's the sad truth of the matter.
Yeah, and if you want to stop recording and we can keep it among us, I can share. It is not healthy where I am, and it hasn't been for years. Culturally.
Yeah.
For any of that. Yeah, there's a policy that says you do it, but it's not really. It's discouraged, actively discouraged.
Yeah.
And whether I'm talking very broadly, anything that would, that would be helpful, on the mental health end.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Hey, Zoe.
I won't say anymore.
Hey, Zoe, what does, Amy has a particular position in her firm, right? That is for the HR end of that.
So Amy Johnson is chair of our well-being committee. We've had a lot of focus on mental health issues. I was also going to share here for BAMSL, PTO is paid time off. You can take vacation, you can take sick leave. It can be for physical health or mental health. But what I struggle with is, and again, it's stigma. We had an employee who had a very difficult time and was put on medical leave because of his mental health issues. And it was hard because if that person had had cancer, everybody would have circled around them and it would have been okay to talk about. But even with a small staff, it was difficult it's just a very difficult subject. And I think that is, for that person, how much they wanted to share, which I guess is true if you have a physical ailment too, but not so much really. And with the board, why is this person not at work? It was rough. It was a real rough time to try to know how to handle that as an employer. And so I think we need some work there as well, in policies and in conversations.
Yeah, to Zoe's point, I agree. I think the reason it's more difficult to talk about when it's mental health versus a physical ailment is probably because there's not a lot of understanding. And it is something that is usually kept more private. So you also don't want to come across as overbearing if you're inquisitive or trying to show that you care, if the person doesn't want to talk about it. But I think, I'd be interested to see, I'm sure Jamie has some resources because she does talk about benefits packages and policies and how that can help with the employee's well-being as part of some of her strategic planning. But I'd be interested to see what some of the best practices are and kind of, employer guidelines, appropriate things to ask or, follow up on when someone is on medical leave. Because if someone was having a baby or had cancer or was sick, people would usually set up a meal train or, do other things. But, should we start doing that type of stuff for mental health breaks as well if the person does share that?
Dave, help me remember, that's a good thing for us to talk on the well-being committee and see if Amy in her role with HR at her firm could offer some suggestions about how to deal with that. That could be very helpful. We could do an article or something about that. So don't you think?
And
Yeah,
also the ABA has a number of good resources on their website regarding well-being, and both from an employer standpoint, a personal standpoint, a bar standpoint, a list of different things that we can do.
Yeah, I'm seeing their well-being toolkit on their website for lawyers and legal employers. So I'll share that in the resources for this one. We'll have Jamie email it out, but I'm going to definitely mark this up, and maybe our homework can be for next time. We can lead it off with things that we learned or policies that we can help our workplaces implement to destigmatize mental health and, kind of so that people are prioritizing it.
Kind of along those lines, not really legal industry related, but my cousin is an engineer who works on a chemical manufacturing plant, so an industrial environment. Not what you would expect to have the best eye on mental health, but his company has policies where you can just take a mental health day if you're feeling overwhelmed or you've got stuff going on and you're just not feeling 100%. You're able to just call in, no questions asked, take a mental health day, decompress, and come in the next day. And no one looks down on you for that. So it's kind of interesting that the industrial industry is ahead of the legal industry in destigmatizing mental health.
Do you happen to know, is it a younger company? Because to say mental health day, that seems like a very, not to generationally branded, but kind of a millennial term.
They've been around for a long time. So, yeah.
That's really great that they have that. I think it helps, putting a label on it sometimes helps destigmatize. But like Zoe said, PTO can be can be used for any type of health issues, mental health being under that umbrella. Here, I'm going to screen share real quick. Here's the Lawyers Wellbeing Toolkit, created by, I don't know what year this was, but it seems like they have a couple policies and practices audit, some workbooks, and then a list of speakers and consultants. Maybe we should, but looks like a really well put together thing. And I'd be interested to see how many actions we can kind of encourage our employers to take as a result.
So
you're talking about millennials, Sarah, and that is certainly something that I've noticed, that there is a much broader acceptance. The younger, really any profession, but of course me mostly talking to attorneys, the younger an attorney you talk to, or maybe some of the other groups, the younger they are, the much more accepting they are, and I read a little bit about it, and it's no big deal, to a lot of them. Some of them have, grown up with it, being exposed to it, and their friends and their classmates, and so it's a much easier, at least they have some more, awareness of, some of the issues. And I do think there's a lot less stigma with many of them, certainly not all of them. It depends. Again, it's a little bit cultural and maybe socioeconomic, I suppose.
Yeah, I think there is a point to the socioeconomic, because therapy is pretty inaccessible, and a lot of resources that people use. That's why a lot of people do as tacky as it sounds, the self-help books and the self-guided workbooks, because that's a lot more accessible with American healthcare than finding a therapist that even takes insurance at this point.
Interestingly, I'm sorry, go ahead, Sarah.
Oh, I was just gonna, I'll save it for the end, because it's kind of a meme or joke, but it's related to this topic.
So, most of us know, you would describe this, even going into all this, there was a mental health crisis, certainly in terms of the availability of, therapist use very generally. And I was talking to one this week, and, many of them are still doing remote. Some of them are in the office. I know some that are in their offices, and some of them are remote. But apparently many of the health insurance companies have determined that it's less expensive for them to provide those services from their home office or their home or their living room. And so they're cutting their reimbursements, and of course, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out, okay, if they're working from home, they're probably doing it for health reasons. Many of them have they've got some sort of overhead, no matter how they're compensated. If they're, if they're a solo or small, they're going to have rent most likely, or if they'll turn on their insurance, they still have all those expenses. Yeah, maybe their utilities are slightly less, but they're just. I've heard some rumblings about it a little ways back, but actually talked to one this week who confirmed that, yeah, in fact, the insurance companies are cutting back their reimbursements, which is not good. Which is, whatever, and it's interesting, because it's health insurance companies who, many of them should know, that it affects the physical health of their people too. And they should want their people, their insurance, you would hope. But
yeah,
I don't run an insurance company, so.
Well, does anyone else have anything to add to this, or any other resources, Amy or Crystal or Joe? Then we can go into the jokes and memes section of the meeting.
Hey, Sarah, I placed that ABA toolkit link in the chat as well.
Oh, yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much. And we can share that also on our blog vault. We are almost caught up with all of our resources. So check out the Collab Circle page on Legal Back Office's website. That's where we link to stuff, and we'll also have the future topics listed there. So I actually, Jamie will be proud of me. I have something to share. So this is kind of the attitude I've been feeling, some of the generational workplace differences. My grandma would whisper if someone in her church was, going to therapy or had a problem in the family. Whereas I am loudly at brunch talking about my therapist. It's no secret that my therapist is the connection between Jamie and I, and how I got my job at Legal Back Office. So I always tell that story, and I'm very open with it. Whereas, I asked my therapist, I'm like, is that okay to share when I see some of our mutual friends out that you're my therapist. She's like, yeah, no, it's always up to the patient. It's just, I can't disclose that if I'm in public, but, she thought that was funny too, that there's, she's like, her older patients would never have acknowledged her in public, whereas her younger patients are always like, oh, hi, Dr. Britt, how are you doing? So. Anyone else have any things to share? I think Randy mentioned it, but the ISBA Solo and Small Firm Conference is happening virtually today and tomorrow. Jamie's topic, which actually kind of backs into this, but talking about how to create a positive work culture in the virtual world and digital age, and that kind of dictates how comfortable people feel at work, or how they interact with their coworkers. That's available. It's not at a certain live time slot, but it's available on the ISBA website. I believe just starting today, and I hope indefinitely. But there's both a civility CLE credit and just a regular CLE credit, but there's that specific subsegment that you need to get. But we'll be sharing that on our social media later today, a link to that for everyone to go and participate.
Yeah, it is. It is available supposedly starting today. Hers is, along with a handful of others that will be available, although they're available complimentary to the people that are registered for Solo Small Firm. Yeah. And I would imagine later, probably what they will do is they'll probably be more widely available at some point in the future. But at least for the time being, I believe what they were doing was keeping it just for the registrants.
Yeah. Not exactly sure. I'm not seeing a live link to it there, but we'll just link to the page that has the info on it. Oh, it's at the CLE catalog. So your login would be able to get you there, but I'll send a link to the description of the session and its accreditation for everyone. Yeah.
Yeah. Conference starts at noon today and noon tomorrow, I think.
Yeah. Awesome. Any other announcements or updates before we wrap up? As a reminder, next week not next week, but the next session, we will be talking about managing your online reputation. Jamie's had a talk on that before as well. I think at the Missouri Bar Association Tech Show last year. Any other updates or resources to share? I shared a link to the ISBA session that Jamie's leading in the chat. Okay, awesome. Well, thank you all for participating today. As a reminder, we can always keep the conversation going. We do have a LinkedIn group where people can share resources, but we also share the resources on our legal back office social media. We have Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn and Twitter. And we're considering making a Facebook group or Facebook event. I don't know if that's something that people would prefer. I don't think LinkedIn groups have been, in my experience, they haven't been as active as Facebook groups, but I also don't know if that's a generational thing. So, awesome. Okay, well, thank you all for your time today, and we will see you in 2 weeks, November 12th, I believe. Yeah, November 12th. So thanks so much, everyone. Have a good one.
Bye-bye. Thank you.